Is Jay Bilas there?
Sure is.
All right. Bilas, you've seen Dan Dockich's game, haven't you?
Yeah, I saw it in college briefly. I didn't spend a whole lot of time breaking his game down, though.
Well, he's called out the couple of the Danettes, saying, for the love of God, nobody else gets to shoot on camera except for you, Dan, because McLovin and Seton were taking some jumpers there. So you saw McLovin shoot. If you had a shooting contest between McLovin and Dockich, who you got?
Yeah, I think it's really a coin flip, Dan. Athletically, it is a stunningly fair fight.
All right, that's it, Jay. That's all we wanted to talk to you about.
That's pretty much all I've got anyway.
All right. What should I be watching for at the Combine?
Well, I mean, I think it's like anything else, Dan. You'll see guys at the Combine that'll just stick out to you and stand out. It's almost like watching when you go to a high school AAU thing where you go, wait a minute, that guy's just different. And there are a few guys that really stood out to me yesterday. And I've seen all of them, but Melvin Frazier at Tulane really stood out with he's a 6'7" wing with his length and his ability to guard people, and he's so athletic. His offensive game is not as good as his defensive game, but he can get to the rim and he can make an open shot. He needs to be more consistent. And then I thought Dante DiVincenzo stood out in a big way yesterday, and I'd be surprised, honestly, if he plays again today. Frankly, I'd advise that he didn't play. But he's a first round pick. I think you saw out there, several guys, 3, 4, maybe 5 guys that could very well be first round picks. Even Javon Carter stood out, a guy who played 4 years and put together a really impressive body of work. And you'd think, okay, well, we know who he is. But he really stood out with, just how relentless he is defensively. And he'll make a team just because of that you can put him, he can affect the game by just putting him on the ball. And he's gonna impact things.
I still, every time, and we've all done this, where you play a game and then all of a sudden you realize, like, that guy doesn't run fast or jump high or quick or anything, but he's just good. Like, there are those guys where they kind of defy logic. But so how do you assess that thing that they have where you go, somehow they make it work when they're on the basketball floor. But if you had them do drills, you probably wouldn't even, notice them.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, 5-on-5 is really where everything sticks out. I mean, I remember years ago, I played in college with Chip England, who's now with the San Antonio Spurs and one of the best shooting coaches, if not the best in the game. And when Corey Maggette came out of Duke, I think it was in '99, he was a freshman, and he was not maybe not as skilled at that age as he would be later, and so workouts might be an issue where you get into something, you're not shooting it well, and so Chip told him that if you're in a workout and you're not shooting it well, things aren't going right. Take a quick break and leave your gym bag right in front of all the scouts that are sitting in the stands to the left or right, whatever it was. And he says, and go over and just take your shirt off. And because Maggette was a Greek god with his build, and so you see people in this testing and how athletic they are, and you can kind of get seduced by their athleticism. But if you don't see it in the 5-on-5, you have to be a little bit careful with that. And like you were saying, guys that can just play. One of those guys is Jerome Robinson coming out of Boston College. Like he's a really complete player. He's not playing at this thing because I think he's going to be a first round pick, but he's a complete player that may not athletically wow you, but he gets out in a 5-on-5 game and he will not wash out of the league. He will find a place for a long time there.
If you're the Suns GM, who are you taking?
I would take DeAndre Ayton, but just being completely frank with you, I think I still err on the side of super athletic big guys, and maybe that's the wrong way to look at it, or I don't want to squeeze out somebody that like Luka Doncic, who is a great passer, and the ball moves when he's in there, and he's really good off screen rolls. He's not the freaky athlete that that Ayton is, but I just think Ayton's one of these prototype big guys that can step away and shoot it. And but he's not a big time shot blocker. He can block shots, but he doesn't. He's not like a guy who's going to block 5 a game or something like that, like Mo Bamba is, or Jaren Jackson Jr. Guys like that. But I tend to err with the big guys. Maybe I'm just biased that way.
But do you think that Doncic is sort of playing a power hand here by saying, I don't know if I'm going to leave Real Madrid and go to the NBA? And if he's going number one, he's coming over. But if the Suns all of a sudden take DeAndre Ayton, he doesn't want to go to Sacramento. Do you think that's the power play that's going on?
It could be. I don't really know the answer to that. I think it's just sort of a leverage thing. They're about to start the Euro Final Four in Belgrade, I think, in the next day or two. So he's mostly focused on that. But, he's got a relationship with the new Phoenix coach, Igor Kokoshkov. And so maybe it's just the idea of getting a promise from Phoenix at number one so he knows what's going on. But he could still, even if he gets drafted by, just for argument's sake, by Sacramento number 2 and he doesn't want to go there, he doesn't have to do that. He can still use leverage after the draft and stay overseas. Sacramento would keep, whoever drafts him would keep his rights. But if you're going to park yourself overseas, and you may be able to force a trade. I don't think it's quite the same as like John Elway when he said he was going to play baseball back in '83. Because back then, I think I think the rules were the same in the NBA, where if you didn't play the sport for a year, you went back, you could go back in the draft. But once somebody takes you, they've got your rights for, I don't even know what the period of time is, but it's a significant period of time.
Talking to Jay Bilas from the Mothership, the NBA Combine on ESPN. The ACC wants to expand March Madness to 72 teams. Your reaction is?
A bunch of the ACC coaches have talked about the fact that, everybody and their brother in football gets to play in a bowl game, but only 68 teams go to the tournament. And there's still, especially with some of the older coaches, something that in the back of their minds that if they don't get to the tournament, they can get fired. And any ACC team is good enough just to get in. They're good enough to go to the Final Four, because Syracuse did it a couple years ago, that kind of thing. And there may be some truth to the fact that a bunch of teams in the league could go to the Final Four and make a run in the tournament. But I just don't believe 72 would make any difference from 68. I think if you're in the first 4, that thing in Dayton, you're going to get fired anyway. It's not that big of a deal. And to me, I mean, maybe this indicates I'm an elitist, but I don't really believe the tournament starts until the first Thursday when you get to the 64-team bracket. Because if they're still trying to convince everybody that these games, whether they're 4 games or what would be 8 games, they're not playing games, that we need to call them opening round games. They're not opening round games. They're play-in games. That would mean we have to believe that 8 teams are playing in the opening round and 60 teams get a bye. That just doesn't make any rational sense. Nobody looks at it that way, and it's more NCAA nonsense. So whether it's 72 or 68, it's the same thing. The tournament doesn't start till Thursday for the overwhelming majority of people that are consuming the product.
How do you solve the mystery that is Michael Porter Jr.? He came out and said he's the best player in the draft, which great. I mean, I kind of have to go back to his high school days to look at his game film. But Michael Porter is, he's that size, that ability is sort of the future of the NBA. But how good is he?
I don't know, and you hit the nail. I think he's the most, I think he's the most intriguing decision in the draft. And he was on our set yesterday and had a great answer to the question about his injury and his back surgery. He said it was a blessing because he was in pain and he wasn't the same player for a long period of time, even before he had the surgery. And so he kind of planted in my head with that answer. And I don't know whether it's his answer or his agent, Mark Bartelstein. It doesn't matter. It was a great answer. But I started thinking about, well, wait a minute. When I questioned some of the things about him when he was in high school, was he injured then? And so I thought that was a great way to put it. But, he was a guy that could have been the first pick if he had come out of high school. He's that kind of talent. I did question, along with other people, is he how tough is he? But skill-wise and ability-wise, all the measurables, he's really, really talented. And at some point in the draft, with the back injury and the surgery or not, at some point, even with that, you're going to say, it's worth the risk here. I don't think you say that at 1, 2, or 3 because of just how good these other guys are without any questions about health. But you get to the 5th pick or maybe the 6th or something, then you're going, you know what? He's worth the risk there. But you got to get something for a top pick. You can't. I don't think you can take any risk with health. Your doctors had better tell you that there are no red flags with regard to him.
Before I let you go, first time you saw James Harden play, what did you think?
He was at Arizona State, and I thought he was really good. But when I would say, Dan, it's so hard. Like when you're looking back on these things, I used to see Steph Curry play in high school, and if you had told me when he was in high school that he was going to play in the NBA, I would have said, "Come on, man, are you kidding?" and let alone a MVP. And kind of similar with Harden. Like I thought he'd play in the NBA and be a good player. When I first saw him, was I thinking, okay, there's a future MVP Hall of Famer. I didn't think about it that way, and I don't know whether that's good or bad, honestly. Whether you have to have it proven to you or something like that. I mean, maybe that's the right way to look at it. I have no idea. All I know is the more I watch this stuff, I was way more confident 10, 12 years ago in what I thought than I am now. I kind of look at it now, going, I don't know. You have certain beliefs. But I still keep my mistakes of what I thought about somebody years ago at the forefront of my mind when I'm looking at somebody else, because you're thinking, hey man, don't judge too quickly. There's some guys you see LeBron, I mean, you knew when he was in high school. I mean, I remember when he was in high school, I had said on a high school, we broadcast this high school game. It sounds crazy back when we did it, but I said he's the best high school player I've ever seen. And I got criticized for it. And I was like, no, this guy's the real thing. But some of the other guys, you don't want to dismiss too quickly somebody that you're saying, well, I don't think he's that good and all that stuff. You got to be careful, or at least I feel like I have to be careful with that.
Who did you whiff on? What's the biggest whiff where you look back and it's always there in the forefront when you're sizing up these players?
Biggest whiff was back when, and there were a number of whiffs, but the biggest one was back when I was still dubious of how good high school players were going to be, and when I was not sure athleticism could carry the day over skill, and when I was not sure that Dwight Howard should be the number 1 pick over Emeka Okafor. And you look back at that going, what was I smoking? And could I get some more now? Because he was so ridiculously athletic. But I thought, well, his skill level's not there and all that stuff. And you're going, it doesn't matter. Like his ridiculous athleticism is going to trump all that. And I kind of was biased against the high school players because they hadn't proven anything yet. Instead of looking at the raw ability level. And now I'm exactly the opposite. Now I don't want to hear all my college friends talk about, well, what has this guy done, and how can we make a freshman player of the year? I'm going, no, I've made that mistake. These guys are talented and they're for real. And to pretend otherwise with I had an old school mindset back then, and that's been beaten out of me.
I remember being around Steve Nash's agent, and he said he's going to be a star, and I went, where? Like, what? Really? And he goes, oh, my God, people are going to love playing with this guy. And I remember watching him in college at Santa Clara, and I went, well, it's a nice little story. And, he seems, he's like an energizing buddy and frenetic pace and the whole bit. And then all of a sudden, next thing I know, I'm at an all-star game, and then Nash's agent comes up and goes, remember I told you Steve was going to be really good? I said, yeah, I remember that, Billy. I remember that. Bill Duffy. Yeah.
Well, Agents always say their players are their stars, but doesn't mean they're not right when they say it. But it's hard to and look, it goes the other way too. There are a bunch of guys that I thought would be stars and didn't turn out as good as I thought. And they're like I didn't think Anthony Bennett should have been the first pick of the Cavs several years ago. Yeah. I don't remember the year it was, but I didn't think that was the right choice. But I didn't think that dude was going to wash out either. If he had been taken at number 5, I would have said, yeah, he's a really good player. I mean, I watched him play at UNLV. Did I think that dude was going to wash out of the league completely? No way. The one, though, I'll tell you that still I have not changed my mind on, even though it didn't work out, was Greg Oden. That if Greg Oden had been healthy, and there was no indication that he was not going to be healthy when he was drafted, I still would take him number one because I think he was going to be great. And that's even including Durant, knowing that Durant, because I said the draft night, Durant's going to lead the league in scoring multiple times. He's going to be a great player. I just thought Odin was the better choice. And I wonder
you
how
would
many
do that
teams
now?
really,
You would take, if Odin was healthy, that you would still look at him as a long-term investment better than Durant?
yes, I would. And even though the game, right now maybe it'd be a little bit different because the game has changed a little bit. We're still, that was back in 2007, if I remember right. But the game has changed a little bit and evolved. So maybe if you're doing the decision with those two guys at age 18 today, in today's game, maybe the dynamic would be a little bit different. I need to think about that. But I really would be interested as to how many GMs, if they had the first pick back in 2007, would have taken Durant number one. That's kind of the beauty of, like, the difficulty of being a GM, obviously, is you are stuck with whatever pick you make.
Yeah.
And but the hard part for the rest of us, even though we're not, it's obviously more difficult being a GM, but we have to, like you and I have to opine on every player. So we're stuck with our thoughts on every player. They're only stuck with the future with who they drafted. But woe is us. It's not a big deal. We'll all survive it.
Man, that's a hot take you just dropped on. That's a white hot on a Friday with 20 minutes left to go in the show. That's a hot take you just dropped there. Stephen A. Smith just said, "Oh my God."
Yeah, so I like to, and I'm going to come up with my mock shooters list of who are the best shooters in the Danettes versus Dan Dockich.
I can take Dockich. I'm not worried about that, but I think McLovin might be able to outshoot Dockich, and Seton is sneaky good. So I think that there's three of us in this room that can outshoot Dan Dockich.
I'm just so glad that the Supreme Court has ruled on gambling, so I can put some money on that and really cash in.
Thank you, Jay.
Always great, Dan. Thank you.
That's Jay Bilas, the moral compass of college basketball.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.